Hi everybody and welcome along to another video on the channel. Thank you for joining me. It's great to see you. Today we're going to be looking into another feature of Microsoft Purview, which is insider risk management. Before we get into that though, please do give me a quick subscribe and hit that notifications bell if you don't want to miss any content from me. And if you found this video useful at the end, please give me a thumbs up. That will really help me to reach a wider audience and grow the channel. But without any further ado, let's dive in to Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management. So what exactly is insider risk management? Well, it's a feature of Microsoft Purview that correlates various signals to identify potential malicious or inadvertent insider risks. And these can be things such as intellectual property theft, data leakage, security violations. And insider risk management enables you to create policies to manage security and compliance. Built with privacy by design, users are pseudonymized by default, and role-based access controls and audit logs are in place to help ensure user-level privacy. And why is this necessary? Well, that's because users or employees now have more access to create and manage and share data across a broad spectrum of platforms and services. In most cases, organizations have limited resources and tools to identify and mitigate organization-wide risks, while also meeting their compliance requirements and employee privacy standards. And these risks can include potential data theft by departing employees and risk of data leaks of information outside your organization by accidental oversharing or malicious intent. Now, this is from the learn.microsoft.com page on insider risk management. I'll put the link in the description of this video to all of this, and you can learn so much about insider risk management, how to plan for it, get started with it, learn about all the policy templates, risk policies, and so on. But there's no substitute for having a look at these technologies in action, and that's what I intend to do for this video. Let's take a look at it within Microsoft Purview. So here we are in the compliance portal at compliance.microsoft.com. I'm in as a global administrator here, but as I always recommend at this point, do ensure if you can that you are using the principle of least privilege. So log in as compliance administrator or something appropriate to this role, and use privilege information management for just-in-time permissions as well. But where do we find insider risk management? Well, it's under the solutions on the left-hand side, and if we scroll down, we can see it here. So we'll click into insider risk management, and there we go. Let's collapse that sidebar so we get more on the screen, and it's taking us straight into alerts. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the overview page. Now, in here, when you first launch insider risk management, you have some options for your top actions to help you get it up and running. And it'll tell you this checklist of what you've done here already and what you need to do. So I've already turned on analytics to scan for potential risks. Now that should be the first thing that you do, and that can take some time to run through on that initial scan. So that is done. It's checked off. There's also some content here that you can get to know insider risk management. You can configure your insider risk settings, create your first policy, and you can go in to see all recommended actions to go through all of those. And there's a little video here on the right that you can watch through as well. Scrolling down, we can see any alerts that we have to review, any policy matches. We don't have any active ones in here at the moment. You can see any active cases as well. We'll explain all about cases as we go through this video. On users as well, we can view all of our users who are highlighted by insider risk management activities. And we can see other metrics like policies with the most activity. And at the bottom, we've got insider risk analytics, and it tells us that it's scanning for potential risks in the organization. And it can take up to 24 hours to detect and return risk activities. And when that scan is complete, you will see a link to review the results. User activity reports as well. You can investigate user activity to search for any user's recent activity, regardless of whether they're already included in a policy or an alert. And you can review the results in a detailed report to help you quickly identify potential risks. And there's a link to manage reports there as well. Okay. So what we can also do as well at the top here, we can manage our insider risk settings on the cogwheel. So if we go into here, we can see some core settings for the insider risk capabilities. Now, first and foremost, in the general tab, you can see the privacy settings. And there are two options in here. You can choose to show anonymized versions of usernames or otherwise. So basically, we can have an anonymized version of Grace Taylor in this form to maintain privacy. And I always do this, especially for demo purposes, even though this is a demo tenant, just to illustrate that privacy should always be at the forefront of any organization's minds. We have policy indicators here, and insider risk policy templates define the type of risk activities that you want to detect and investigate. Each template is based on indicators which trigger alerts when users perform related activities, and you can choose one or more of these indicators that will be included in your policy templates. We have office indicators here as a category. You can select all, or you can select only the ones you want, and these include things like sharing SharePoint files with people outside your organization, downloading content, adding people inside the organization to priority SharePoint sites. There is a lot of stuff in that office section alone. The next section we have is device indicators. Now you'll see that these are all grayed out, and that is because I have not onboarded my devices or any devices into my Microsoft 365 tenant with Defender or Purview just yet. And you would need to do that in order to make these available to you. So, and there's instructions there on how to onboard to collect those indicators, which you can link to. Further down, a similar principle. In fact, most of the rest of these are grayed out because these relate to endpoint. So we've got Defender for endpoint indicators again there. So I'd need to turn on those indicators. Alert sharing must be turned on in the Defender 365 portal. Risky browsing indicators. Again, it wants me to onboard devices. Physical access indicators. Now this will be to do with physical badging, things like that in your organization, in your premises. And you can link to Microsoft Defender for Cloud apps as well. So we could select activities that link to Defender for Cloud apps here. We could select all. We can do that quite easily. And that'll be things like unusual mass downloading of content from a connected cloud app, anonymized IP address activity, etc., etc. We've got health record access indicators, cumulative exfiltration detection, risk score boosters. We have a ton of stuff in there. And once we're happy with that, we can save those and it will update for us. Fantastic. That's policy indicators. We have policy timeframes as well. Now, the timeframes that you choose here go into effect when they trigger a match for an insider risk policy. For example, if you set the activation window to 15 days and past activity detection to 30 days, and then a user triggers a policy match on July the 1st, that policy will retrieve user activity from 30 days ago, which will be June the 1st, and will continue to record new activity for 15 more days. So we have our activation window here, and we can determine how long policies will actively detect activity for users and is triggered, and we can slide that slider as necessary for activation window and past activity. I'm not going to change any of those. We'll move on to the next screen. Intelligent detections. Here we can define how the detection of risk activities are processed for insider risk alerts. We have a preview feature here, which is to ignore email signature attachments. So when that is turned on, if an email containing only a signature as an attachment is sent to someone outside your org, your policies will attempt to ignore it. And that applies only to activity detected by the indicator sending email with attachments to recipients outside the organization. So then we could turn that one on. I'm always cautious about preview features, as I always say in these videos, but we could slide that on if we wanted to. File activity detection here, we can help to ensure policies detect file-related activity that's most relevant. So we can put in some file type exclusions here, so we can put in things like JPG and so on and so forth. We can set a minimum number of daily events to boost the score for unusual activity, so you can let Microsoft know how many daily events are required to boost the risk score for activity that's considered unusual for a user. We can set an alert volume here, so user activities detected by policies are assigned a specific risk score, and We can also see and set some Microsoft Defender for Endpoint alert statuses. We need to have our devices onboarded again for that one in order for that to work. But insider risk policy templates that detect security violations use security alerts from Defender for Endpoint to prioritize related activity. So we have domains here as well. We can specify unallowed and allowed domains if we want to, and third-party domains as well. We can set file path exclusions, default file path exclusions, sensitive info type exclusions. That's a preview feature as well. And lots and lots of cool stuff in here that we can put into the intelligent decisions. There's so much we can include and exclude there and save when we're happy. Export alerts, we can use Office 365 Management Activity APIs to export alert details, so we can turn that on or off. We can set priority user groups to define users in the organization whose activity requires closer inspection based on factors such as their position, level of access to sensitive information, or risk history. And once created, these groups can be included in certain policy templates that are more likely to generate severity alerts. So we could create a priority user group there and put those sensitive or key personnel in there. Priority physical assets. These assets represent priority locations in your organization, such as company buildings or server rooms, to detect activity for these assets. Power automate flow to automatically manage insider risk management processes and tasks. And you can link right to some templates for flows there that you might want to use. Microsoft Teams preview. You can integrate Microsoft Teams capabilities with insider risk case management to enhance collaboration with stakeholders, and you can toggle that on or off and save your preferences there. You can set some analytics settings. When turned on, Microsoft will scan sources in your organization, such as the Microsoft 365 audit log, to detect the same activities used by insider risk policies. Scans run daily and provide real-time assets that can help you set up and refine policies. You can set the admin notifications, how you want those to be processed. So there's a few choices in here. You can send a notification email when the first alert is generated for a new policy, and you can send to users assigned to particular role groups such as insider risk management, insider risk analysts, and investigators. And you can do things like send a daily email for new high severity alerts, send a weekly email summarizing policies that have unresolved warnings, and send a monthly email summarizing new analytics scan insights, and an email when analytics is turned off for your organization. And then the last thing here in the wider settings is to enable inline alert customizations for all alert reviewers. So allow the following assigned roles to make policy edits using inline customization. So that is for insider risk management analyst and insider risk management investigator. And we can easily toggle that one on and off as needed. So those are the core settings, and you want to make sure that you have those exactly how you want them, or near enough, when you start setting up insider risk management. You can always go back and tweak those if you find that they're not acting the way you need them to. Okay, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go in order on these tabs. We're going to quickly go through these and try not to drill down too much, and not so much of a deep dive, more of a high-level overview of this feature. We'll start with notice templates because that's important to have set up. If you watch some of my other videos, you'll know that notice templates are part of other features within Microsoft Purview, such as e-discovery, and you can use those to alert users when they are part of an e-discovery case. Similarly, you can have notice templates set up for insider risk management cases to alert users in certain situations. Now I do have one in here, but it is loading very slowly at the moment, so we'll give that a moment. But in the meantime, if we click on create a notice template, we can see the sort of thing we've got here. It's fairly straightforward. Put in a template name, send from, carbon copy, blind copy, put in the subject and the message body, and then save. So there we go. We have the one that I've created previously, and I created this one as warn of offensive email or Teams content. And here, if I click onto that, I can see exactly what the subject's going to be. It will say in the subject, you have violated the email / Teams acceptable use policy. The message is to inform you that we've detected you have misused the messaging tools available to you as part of your role. We will inform your line manager and further actions may be taken. And you can go in and you can edit that and tweak it as you need to. But that's notice templates. So think about those as well, the sort of templates that you might want to trigger in relation to your insider risk management cases when you have policy matches that you need to be thinking about. Okay, next, let's take a look at policies. Now, policies are very important. These will be needed to use insider risk management, and I have a few policies in here already. We have the data leaks policy, we have the data theft by departing users policy, and we have an adaptive protection policy as well, which was set up automatically for me when I turned on the forensic evidence feature, which we'll briefly mention later on in the video. The status is either healthy, or we have some warnings on these ones, which we can take a look at. And if we look at each policy, we can see the users that are in scope for that, any active alerts, any confirmed alerts or actions taken on alerts, and the policy alert effectiveness. Now, in earlier tests, I've managed to get some corresponding matches to the data leaks policy by triggering a download of content from a OneDrive for a user in this tenant, and that matched. So earlier today, I did do another mass download, but that corresponding alert has not appeared yet. But you'll remember in the overview screen, it did say that the analytical scanning can take up to 24 hours to make a match. So that's not a huge surprise to me. We can drill into these policies and see some information on those. We can see the creation date, when there was last edited, the policy health, and the policy settings. We can see some recommendations here. It's suggesting that real-time analytics are now available for the policy. We can edit the policy to review the real-time insights that highlight how many users recently performed activities that exceeded current thresholds, and get recommendations for new thresholds to improve the performance. So that's really interesting. Let's just quickly look at policy settings before we edit the policy. And here we can see exactly what it's covering. It's covering all active users, and the user scope is include all users. Yeah, recommend for best coverage. And we see all the indicators and sequences and so on. But if we click onto edit policy, we can go through as if we were creating this from scratch. So imagine this is creating a new policy as well. This is exactly what you would see. The policy template that we have chosen in this case is data leaks, and there are a number of templates that you can choose from. And there are some prerequisites, some optional, some otherwise that you need to have in place for the policies to be effective. So I've selected a DLP policy in relation to this. Devices onboarded. In fact, you can't actually select this. It actually detects if you've got these things. But devices onboarded, I don't have any devices onboarded at the moment. Physical badging connectors are not configured in my organization. It gives you information here on how to set up badging connectors, if that's appropriate to your organization. Triggering events. Users perform selected exfiltration activities that exceed specific thresholds, or an activity matching a specific DLP policy, or downloading files from SharePoint, printing files, copying data to personal cloud storage services. So we can go next and we can see the name and description. We can't edit that because it's a live policy now, and it's actually from a template. We could put in the description, and I would always encourage this, but for the purposes of testing, I tend not to. And here we can choose the users and groups that we want this policy to apply to. Now, they do recommend to include all users and groups, but you might want to get more granular in certain circumstances, depending on your needs. So you can do that. You can include specified users and groups as well. The content to prioritize. You have two choices here. You can prioritize content based on factors like where it's stored, how it's classified. Risk scores are increased for any activity that contains priority content. So this is a way to get to the the content and the users, etc., more effectively and more quickly, so it's not trawling through everything in your tenant. So if you wanted to choose to prioritize content, you could go to these specific criteria like SharePoint sites, sensitivity labels, sensitive info types, file extensions, trainable classifiers. And if you click on next, it's going to go through that subsection there to add in the necessary SharePoint sites and sensitivity labels and types and so on and so forth. So have a think about that. But for the purposes of this example, I'll not change this. I'm not going to prioritize specific content, but that's a really powerful thing to do, and you should certainly be thinking in those terms. The triggering event. Now here is where you can choose what your triggers for the policy is going to be. This event determines when a policy will begin to assign risk scores to a user's activity. Now, you can do things like a user matches a data loss prevention policy. So the policy will start assigning risk scores when a user performs an activity matching the DLP policy you select. The DLP policy must be configured to generate high severity incident responses, or incident reports rather. So that's important. If you want to select a DLP policy, it must generate high severity incident reports in order to work. And you can drop down here and you can select the appropriate DLP policies if you wish to. Now I've accidentally selected it there to change it, but I'll put it back to what it was. The triggering event that I had for this particular policy is the user performs an exfiltration activity, such as downloading content from SharePoint, sending email with attachments to recipients outside the organization, sharing SharePoint files with people outside the organization. Now I selected everything I could select there. I do have some device-based options that are grayed out there because I've not onboarded my devices to this tenant, so I couldn't select those. And it gives you guidance here on what to do there. It says unable to select some indicators. That's because they're currently turned off in your organization, and you can make them available, but there will be some prerequisite steps to get you there. So select the triggers. So I've essentially selected everything in this area that I'm able to that is not grayed out. So go ahead and go to next. Then we have the trigger thresholds. Each trigger you select uses default thresholds to bring users into scope of a policy, and that threshold is based on the number of events recorded for an activity per day, triggering dimension. However, you can bypass these defaults and specify your own thresholds. So use the default threshold is recommended, or you can use the custom threshold as I've done here. So let's put that back to the default thresholds, and you can see exactly, well, you don't see what it's going to do then, but just to show you that is how it would be by default. But if we use custom thresholds, we can go in and we can make changes here for downloading content from SharePoint. The total number of activities per day must be 5 per day. Number of activities for files containing sensitive info types. So you've got control over these thresholds here in terms of how you want to set them. So that's pretty good. Indicators. So we can see here that the following indicators are used to generate alerts for the activity detected and the policy template selected. So we've got 28 out of 28 Office indicators, and if we drill down, we can see the ones we select there again. Device indicators, none. Physical access indicators, none. And no Defender for Cloud Apps either, although we did enable those, and we could have selected those if we wanted to. So pretty straightforward to set up. And we go next. We're into the detection options. So these advanced detection options are used to generate alerts for the activity detected. And we have sequence detection here. And a sequence is a group of 2 or more activities performed one after the other over a period of 7 days that might suggest an elevated risk. And specific indicators are used to detect each step in a sequence, which are organized into 4 main types of activity, which are download, exfiltrate, obfuscate, and delete. So lots of good content there, and we can learn more about sequences here. So let's grab that link and we'll put that in the description. So again, I've selected all of the sequence detection options that I can here for what is available. We've got cumulative exfiltration detection as well, which detects when the number of activities that a user performs over a certain time exceeds that normal amount. And we've got risk score boosters also. Then we've got indicator thresholds, and we can decide whether to use the default ones or the customized one. And each indicator you select uses thresholds that influence an activity's risk score, which in turn determines whether an alert's severity is low, medium, or high. So we can see here, we can choose the sharing SharePoint files. 1 to 20 events per day generates low severity, 20 to 30 generates medium, and 30 upwards per day generates high severity alerts. You can reset those to defaults if you modify them, and we've got lots of similar options that we can set here as well in terms of those indicator thresholds. Very, very nice indeed. And then you can review the settings, make any final changes, and you can just submit that and it will create it for you. So I'll just confirm that I don't want to change that, because I don't want to change that policy that I already have in place. But just to show you from the very beginning, if you were to, we edited that policy, but if you create it, then this is what it looks like when you're choosing a policy template. And there are a few you can choose from. We have data theft by departing users, we have data leaks, we have data leaks by priority users. Now this one will detect the data leaks by users included in that priority user group that we could have defined earlier that we talked about. So that's a good one. Data leaks by risky users, and detects data leaks by users whose activity might be risky based on messages they send or having experienced a stressor event such as a poor performance review. So, and that's an example of what insider risk management is capable of looking out for. It's there to protect against disgruntled employees who might be thinking, well, I've had a poor performance review, I'm going to potentially look for another job. And they may want to do some damage before they go. They may want to take some of your intellectual property with you to give them a competitive advantage in their next role. And this is going to help you to protect against that. Security policy violations. We've got some preview features in here. Again, I'm always nervous to do preview features. So use those very, very carefully. So these ones linked to Defender for Endpoint, policy violations by departing users, by risky users, by priority users, health record misuse. So detect health record misuse by any included user in the policy. And you can do things in some of these policies like link to your HR systems with HR data connectors, and it gives you guidance on how to import user profile data and by setting up an HR connector. So we can open that up, and it'll show some guidance on how you do that if you want to integrate insider risk management with your HR system. And there's a few that do that. So that's where you would select the policies. You have to select one of these templates. You can't actually do a custom one at this time, which may or may not come as they develop this. In fact, since the last time I looked at this feature, there's definitely a few more in there since last I looked. So keep an eye on it. It'll change. It'll grow. Those preview brackets will probably disappear for some over time. Although we all know preview features can stay for years and years sometimes, which is always a bit weird. Okay, let's cancel that. So that's policies. Now, when you have your policies going, just thinking, I don't know why there's a warning on that. I'm trying to think why there's a warning, but I really don't know why. I wonder if that links to a recommendation of the policies. It's not really telling me why, and I'm not sure. If any of you have played with this more than me and know what that might be, then let me know, because I actually don't know. But anyhow, as you get these policies in place and they start scanning and users start matching some of the activity, then you should start seeing some alerts crop up. Now, I don't have any at the moment, but I did have some in here, and I resolved them through cases. So now you can see there's one left in here at the bottom here. I have one alert here, which cropped up quite a while ago now when I set this up. Last time I played with this, 5 months ago from recording in this video, it did an alert severity of low based from the data leaks policy. And if we click on that, we can get a little bit more data on exactly what happened, or the activity that generated this alert. And it was data exfiltration. It was files downloaded from SharePoint. 25 out of 100, low severity. On the 22nd of January, 8 events, files downloaded from one SharePoint site. So from here, we can click on some links to see what the 8 events were. We can view all activity, we can view all details, user history, and then we can see all the risk factors related to that user activity, and we can drill down into those. We can look into the Activity Explorer. Now this is going to show us exactly what happened here. We can see the collection, files downloaded from SharePoint, the triggering event that caused that, and we can see here file downloaded, the date, the file name, the item type, the site, the workload was a OneDrive folder. So, and we can go in and get more detail about that content. So really cool stuff. And from those alerts, you can create cases. When you get alerts coming in, you can create cases and manage those through to their logical conclusion. And cases is the next tab actually. So if we click onto cases, I do actually have one case which is for that exact item that we just saw on the alerts. And you can see I have a case ID, a case name, the status, it's still currently active, the user is anonymized, it's 4 months ago, the total policy alerts, the content load progress is complete, last updated, lots of good statistics there about the case. Now you'll notice here that you cannot actually create a case from here. You do it based on those alerts that will appear. So from a new alert, you would go into there, have a look, and you would create a case right from that alert, and it would appear in here. So we can go in, we can take a look at the case and see where we're at with it. So in here we have a case overview. We can see all that's in here. We can see what happened. It was based from an alert from the data leaks policy. Content detected. There was no labels detected. There was no sensitive info or classifiers. We had keywords matched. We had SharePoint sites matched. So it's going to tell you exactly what was matched in this case that you've created from an alert. We can see the alerts related to the case that you've created. So we can see that alert there again. We can see the user activity that related to it in a graphical format. We can again go into that Activity Explorer. We can see Content Explorer and see content in there, and it relates to my dear son, Oliver Rising there. So I've obviously used him as a guinea pig there, and we can see the source. And in this case, it's actually a recording downloaded from a SharePoint site. We can make case notes, very similar to how you can do in things like e-discovery. So I've put in a note there, an important note, an important comment. You can add them in quite easily there. And we can look at contributors as well. We can add contributors to this case. We can add individuals, and we can add roles as well. So insider risk management and insider risk management investigators. So easy to add contributors in. In fact, those roles are already there to users that you can explicitly add in. My correction there. You can copy the case link, so you can paste and send that to other contributors as you add them. Loads of great stuff. And we have some case actions as well. What we can do is we can send an email notice. Now this will relate to the template that we set up. And we can choose a notice template, and there we go. Warn of offensive email or Teams content. So this is where you're going to choose your templates, and you can send that, and it will be sent to the user who has triggered the alert. So that is cases. Send the email notice. We can escalate it for investigation. We can integrate with Power Automate to get some flows. We can share it by email or by copying the link. We can collaborate in a Microsoft team. We can manage the pseudonymizing, I cannot say that, the pseudonymization preferences. So if we click on that, we can turn that off or on if we want to change those settings right from within the case. That is such a difficult word to say. And we can learn more about insider risk cases. Really cool stuff. So that is the cases. So what? A quick recap. What have we looked at? We've seen the overview, the alerts, the cases, the policy. If we look in users as well, we can see the list of any users that have been recorded throughout the insider risk management history, and we can click on them and see what this relates to. So like with a lot of Microsoft features, there's a lot of ways to get to the same content just from different areas. And from the users here again, you can export this content, you can automate with Power Automate, you can stop scoring the activity. Notice templates we've taken a look at. There's two things left here on our list of features within Insider Risk Management. We have adaptive protection, which is a preview feature. So here it said that they were unable to automatically set up adaptive protection, so we need to follow the steps in the custom setup. But what does this do? Well, this integrates Insider Risk Management and data loss prevention capabilities to help detect potentially risky activity and then dynamically enforce protection actions based on user risk activities. So it's gonna base it on rules and conditions that you set and do it dynamically rather than statically as we're doing in some of these policies. So here's what we'll set up when you turn on adaptive protection. Insider risk policy scoped to all users in the org, built-in risk levels for adaptive protection to define how risky a user's activity might be. DLP policy in test mode that audits only the user activity. So it told us to go to custom setup. Let's see if we can go through that and do what we need to do. We need to create that insider risk policy. We need to create that DLP policy and turn on adaptive protection. So we could do that one step at a time. Or we could try the quick setup again and see if it'll do it automatically for us. It may or may not. It's worth another try. But if not, it's still trying it. So if not, it may be a case that we look at that in another video. Oh, here we go. We're setting things up. So that may take a little bit of time to there we go. In fact, we're setting it up. It may take 72 hours. Come back to see updates on the progress. So that's definitely going to be one for another video. We'll do more on adaptive protection. So hold our horses on that one for now. That leaves us with the forensic evidence. Now, I took a little bit of a look at this one before starting to film the video, and I couldn't get this going just yet. So this also may be one for another video as I figure this out. So forensic evidence. Now, this is something that is going to enable detection of content on users' devices, and it's going to record potentially matching activities on users' devices. Now, when it says record, I'll be honest, I'm not actually sure what it means there. Is it going to do it like a screen recording, which you can then upload to this capacity that Microsoft are telling you that you have? That's what I'm presuming, but I've not got that far of being able to progress through this yet. So again, this may be another video. I suspect it will be. But the first step that you need to do is to claim your free 20 gigabytes of capacity for a forensic evidence. And you can purchase more above and beyond that. So, but when I clicked onto that, it initiated this this wizard to get me going. But when I continued, I got a lovely error which told me, yeah, computer says no. So to be continued, to be investigated. So we can't really progress that one just yet. But capacity and billing, that's same thing. Forensic evidence settings. So yeah, a bit more description about what it does. It's an investigative tool for viewing captured user activity to determine whether the user's actions pose a risk. And when turned on, you can configure settings that apply to all users whose forensic evidence requests have been approved. So I have turned on the evidence capturing earlier. That was by default set to off. And what it's referencing here is the Microsoft Purview client used to capture activity on users' devices is licensed under use of software, blah, 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 blah. But that to me is indicating that there might be a client installation that we need to push to the users' devices in order for this to work. But I've not as yet seen any real information on that. So if any of you watching know more about this than me, do let me know. But I'm going to do further investigation on this setting because I've not got any further than what I've shown you just yet on it. But That, folks, is it. That is Insider Risk Management, a quick overview of it for you. I think it's a wonderful feature. I think it's already got a lot to offer. I think there will be more coming into it. I think it's a surprisingly underused feature. It's potentially one that maybe organizations are not aware of or aware that they have as part of their E5 subscriptions. But if you have E5 or some combination of licensing that makes you eligible for insider risk management, then I really don't know why you wouldn't be using it, along with things like communication compliance, which again is a whole nother video that we'll be doing on the channel very soon. But there we go. We'll leave it there and we'll start to wind up the video. And that is it, everybody, for another video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found insider risk management interesting and useful. Please go out and check it out. It's part of your E5 subscription, so why wouldn't you be using it? It's so powerful, so much it can do, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, your experiences with it. Any questions you have, just drop them in the comments. Please give me a subscribe and hit that notifications bell and give me a thumbs up if this has been useful to you. And I'll be back very, very soon with more content for you on the channel. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.